앞쪽 자리로 좀 와주시겠습니까? 홍성원 회장님, 이쪽 앞쪽 자리로 오시고, 신철수 대표님도 앞쪽으로 오시고요. 김기환 이사장도 이쪽 앞쪽으로 오시고, 김강수 회장님도 앞쪽에 자리를 하셔야 돼요. 그래야 나오기가 쉽습니다. 일단은 인사하실 때. 권기호 회장님도 앞쪽으로 앉아주시고, 네, 홍성원 회장님도 앞쪽으로 와주시고요. 김기환 회장님, 신철수 명예공무원님도 앞쪽으로 자리를 해주시고요. 권기호 위원장님도 앞쪽으로 자리를 해주셔야 되고요.
5:20. 5:20. Thank you so much for your input. Thank you, Stacey. start soon. If you're sitting, everyone.
저희 그 북미주 자유수호연합이 지난 3월달에 저희가 그동안 지향해왔던 대통령 후보 윤석열 후보께서 당선이 되셔서 저희가 지난 3월달에 아마존 축하 행사를 했습니다.
We support him right now is even elected. Yoon Suk-yeol is the president of the Korea, South Korea. We support a lot of work here. And thank you so much for coming again. We just help together great Korea, the group in here. And as you remember, you attended that day.
그리고 이제 저희가 올해 2022년도를 보내면서 마지막 북미주 자유수호연합 행사로 저희가 그동안 광고를 해왔던 북한 인권의 어머니 수잔 솔티 인권 활동가를 저희가 초청을 했습니다. 굉장히 어렵게 또 초대를 했고 또 수잔 솔티 여사가 워낙 바쁘신 분이라 가지고 저희가 이렇게 시간 할애를 해주고 가서 저희가 굉장히 감사하게 생각하고 있습니다.
The last event of the 2022 in our Great Korea group, we try to do the big events and so finally we got one person, as you know, Dr. Susan. So she's a busy schedule. She's everywhere. She's just finished in Korea lectures and meet a lot of the good people. And I thank you so much, the Dr. Susan, since making that this happen again here.
네, 그래서 먼저 우리 수잔 솔티 여사를 큰 박수로 한번 맞이해 주셨으면 감사합니다.
Thank you for the Dr. Susan. Thank you so much for having
그리고 이번 수잔 솔티 여사를 초청하는데 큰 역할을 해주신 우리 북미 자유수호의 위원장님께 장서 위원장.
Johnson, she connected with Susan, Dr. Susan so long, and he made him working all over the room. Thank you so much, Johnson.
예, 그러면 지금부터 저희 북미주 자유수호연합 행사를 시작하도록 하겠습니다. 먼저 개회 선언을 하겠습니다. 김강수 우리 조지아 위원장님 나오셔서 개회 선언 부탁드리겠습니다.
November 2020 and 22 to 2022 are so many years for the North Korea human rights. Let's start with Dr. Susan So, guest lecture. The opening prayer. The opening remark will be delivered by the chairman of the board, Kim Kwang-soo.
존경하는 시민 동포 여러분, 자유가 있는 우리에게는 소중한 인권이 있습니다. 오늘 이 자리는 북미주 자유수호연합과 그레이트 코리아가 공동으로 북한 인권운동가이신 수잔 솔트 여사님을 모시고 인권에 관한 강연 개최를 선언합니다. 감사합니다.
예, 다음은 대회 기도로 현 예비역 기독군인회 목사이신 백진현 목사님 그리고 예비역 기독군인회 회장직을 맡고 계십니다.
The next one is the opening prayer will be held by the president of the Christian Military Association, Pastor Beck.
기도하시겠습니다.
Let's pray.
하나님 우리 아버지께 감사합니다. 만물을 창조하시고 또 모든 만물에게 은혜 주어 살게 하시는 전능하신 왕이신 하나님, 그리고 모든 만물의 머리 되시는 그리스도 예수, 그 은혜 가운데서 만물을 자유케 하시는 하나님의 은혜를 우리가 고백하고 찬미하고 경배해 드립니다. 주의 말씀에도 그리스도께서 우리를 위하여 자유를 주셨으니 그러므로 굳게 믿음에 굳게 서서 다시는 종이 되지 말라, 이렇게 성경은 말씀하고 있습니다. 하나님께서 사람에게 주신 것은 믿음으로 사는 선택하는 자유를 주셨기 때문에 우리가 이 믿음을, 이 선택하는 자유를 잃어버리면은 이미 사람으로서의 형상과 인생은 끝이 나는 것입니다. 하나님이여, 이 세상에는 사람을 자유를 얼고 매고 사슬을 묶어서 한 인생을 하나님이 주시는 그 자유롭게 선택하며 살지 못하게 만들어 불행하게 만들어서 그 영혼까지 사망의 멸망으로 끌어가려 하는 이 악한 세력들이 온 세상을 덮고 있습니다. 우리가 하나님 앞에 주신 이 자유를 구하고 깨어 있어야 하는 것입니다. 하나님이여, 그러므로 이 자유가 없는 곳에는 인권이 없습니다. 인권이란 것은 사람이 자기가 원하는 말을 선택할 수 있고 믿음을 가지고 살 수 있는 이것이 우리가 이 땅에 사는 사람으로서의 가져야 될 형상인데, 오늘 우리가 예수 안에서 이것을 다 회복하고 하나님 아버지 주님 주시는 인생을 우리가 바로 살게 되게 도와주옵소서. 특히 북한으로 말하면 이 지구상에서 가장 악하게 사람의 모든 선택권을 모조리 다 하나님께서 하나님이 주신 것을 가로막고 파괴하고 죽이고 사슬로 얽어 매어가지고 아무도 머리를 들고 하늘을 바라보지 못하게 만들지 않습니까? 2,500만 이 영혼들을 불쌍히 여기시고 하나님 아버지 저들을 자유하는 은총을 주시기를 원합니다. 한반도에 하나님이 건설하심으로 자유를 주옵소서. 이 자유는 하늘에 속한 것이고 하나님만이 우리를 아시아 동북방에 저 중국의 거룩한 아버지 거대한 저 이 하나님의 공산주의 세력은 우리가 눈으로 보듯이 많은 사람을 생명을 죽이는 것이 파리 목숨처럼 여기고 그들의 민중 이 사람은 이 어떻게 사는지 상관없이 자기 독재 권력만 가지고 사람을 억압하는 것이 지금 우리가 눈으로 보고 든 바가 있습니다. 한반도도 그리하오니 주님이여 불쌍히 여겨 주시기를 바랍니다. 이것은 우리가 우리 사람의 힘으로 이 악한 영들의 세계를 싸워서 이길 수가 없잖아요. 하나님이여 우리를 도우시옵소서. 성령의 우리 가운데 역사하시옵소서. 어둠의 세력을 멸하신 그 은혜로 말미암아 자유의 빛이 우리를 자유케 하시는 하나님의 은혜가 이 한반도를 통해서 온 세상에 전거되게 도와주시기 원합니다. 아시아 동북방의 한반도가 무너지게 되면은 이 지구상에 우리를 자유케 하시는 하나님의 그 의의 빛은 사라져버리고 말 것이오니 주여 금이 불쌍히 여겨 주옵소서. 특별히 이를 위해서 수잔 솔티와 그와 같이 사역하는 여러 동지들에게 은혜를 베푸시고 지혜와 용기를 주시기 바랍니다. 자유연합회와 조지아연합회를 비롯해서 이의 뜻을 같이 하는 수많은 믿음의 동지들이 다 마음을 합해서 기도하게 하시며 하나님의 은혜 가운데 강건하기를 바랍니다. 우리 살아 생전에 아버지 주께서 우리에게 주시는 이 자유의 은총을 보는 은혜의 기회를 우리에게 주시옵기를 원합니다. 대한민국 정부의 윤 대통령과 그의 정부를 축복하시고 하나님 이 일의 소중함을 알아서 협조하게 하시고 다 하나로 뭉쳐가지고 반드시 이 일을 이루게 하여 주시기를 바랍니다. 대한민국의 군대를 경륜해 주시옵소서. 그들에게 성령을 주시고 하나님의 능하신 손에 저들이 쓰임받도록 도와주시옵소서. 참으로 귀한 시간 주신 것을 참으로 감사하고 우리 주 예수 이름으로 기도합나이다.
Thank you, Pastor Bang.
예, 다음은 양국기회단 경례가 있겠습니다. 모두 자리에서 일어나주시면
Would you
감사하겠습니다.
stand up for it will be after the national ceremony. Please pay attention to the flags of the both countries.
국기에 대하여 경례.
Salute to the flag.
바로
Right away. Spirit.
바로 모두 착석해 주시면
By the
감사합니다.
way, please sit in. Please sit in.
예, 다음은 애틀랜타 위원장이신 권기호 위원장의 환영사가 있겠습니다.
The greetings will be delivered by the Gun leaders of the North American Freedom Protection Association.
안녕하세요. 애틀랜타 위원장 권기호입니다. 우리 수단 소트 여사님을 모시고 인권운동에 대한 이런 강연을 듣고 또 우리가 해야 할 일을 또 배우면서 나가면서 이런 글을 한명하니 너무 반갑습니다. 그게 하기 전에 요 며칠 사이에 미사일을 북한에서 엄청나게 쏘았습니다. 이 미사일 쏜 전체가 그 금액마저 4조에서 6조 원이 된다 합니다. 이 전체적인 북한 인원의 식량난이 한 3년 정도가 된다 합니다. 이런 걸 하면서 정말로 지금 종북 세력의 좌파들이 아직도 우리 대한민국의 대통령이 바뀐 줄도 모르고 종단 선언하고 저걸 선언하고 모든 게 참 혐오맹랑합니다. 한미 동맹이라는 우리 주체하에 우리 대통령께서 날아가시면서 우리 평화민주통일 자문회의에서 정말로 참 말 수 없는 그런 일을 하고 있습니다. 정말 우리가 자유수호연합에서 이런 걸 더 이상 볼 수 없어서 정말로 우리가 무언가를 해야 되는데 이래 하지는 못하고 있습니다. 앞으로는 이런 걸 대해서 정말 나라를 위해서 우리가 미국에 살면서 어떻게 해야 하는 건지 우리가 너무 잘 알고 있습니다. 그러면서 말을 한마디 못하고 있습니다. 이러면 안 되지요. 우리가 이제 헤쳐나가야죠. 정말로 우리가 나라를 위해서 뭔가를 보여줄 수 있는 그런 우리 대한민국의 자유수호연합이 되기를 원합니다. 우리 소트 여사님 정말 환영합니다. 감사합니다.
Thank you so much to Mr. Cohen. The speech will be delivered by the Kim Il-hong, the chairman of the Great Korean headquarters in Georgia. 김일홍 회장님의 인사 말씀이 있겠습니다.
예, 여러분 감사합니다. 여기 또 추운 날씨에 이렇게 많이 와주셔서 대단히 감사드리고요. 우리 Welcome to Atlanta, Sudan, and thank you for working human rights North Korea. Thank you. 여러분들 오늘 저희가 이렇게 강연에 갖는 목적을 다 알고 오셨으리라고 생각합니다. 지난 5년 정부, 문정부 기간에 저희가 북한 인권에 대해서 유엔 결의안이 통과될 때마다 저희 나라가 기권을 했습니다. 근데 올해 정권이 바뀌고 다음 달 12월 중순에 유엔에서 북한 인권 결의안이 다시 채택될 예정입니다. 거기에 맞춰서 오늘 이렇게 뜻깊은 행사를 갖는 것은 큰 의미가 있다고 저는 생각을 합니다. 여러분께서도 앞으로 계속해서 우리 북한 인권에 대해서 해외에 살지만은 많은 관심을 가지시고 북한 인권이 자유로워야 저는 평화 통일이 이루어진다고 봅니다. 인권이 그렇게 말살되고 탄압되는 과정에서는 절대 평화 통일이라는 것은 저는 있을 수 없다고 생각을 합니다. 그래서 여러분께서 많이 좀 북한 인권에 관해서도 관심을 가져주시고 또 오늘 이렇게 뜻깊은 날 여러분께서 많이 와주셨는데 제가 몇 분 소개해드리고 내일 저희가 인사말이니까 제가 잠깐 몇 분 소개해드리고 내려가겠습니다. 우리 제29대 미주 한인회 총연합회 우리 정명훈 회장님 저기 텍사스 달라스에서 오늘 이 행사 때문에 오셨습니다. 고맙습니다. 박수로 환영해 주시고 예, 그리고 덴버에서 오셨는데 그레이트 코리아 미주본부 회장을 맡고 있는 우리 곽인환 회장님 고맙습니다. 그리고 여러분 보시면은 저 좌측에 보시면은 우리 멋진 군복을 입고 많이 와 계신데 우리 월남 참전 여병원 회장님, 야 우리 참전 용사님들 고맙습니다. 많이 참여해 주셔서 감사드리고요. 어제 이 자리에서 미 동남부 제30대 한인회장으로 취임하신 우리 홍승원 회장님 또 이렇게 자리에 함께 해주셨습니다. 고맙습니다. 그리고 우리 홍승원 회장님하고 같이 또 30대 동남부 한인회를 이끌어갈 김기환 이사장님 감사합니다. 네. 또 오늘 돌아가실 그런 계획이시셨는데 제가 좀 이 자리에 좀 참석해서 자리 좀 빌려달라고 했습니다. 우리 이임주 테네시 연합회 회장님 감사드립니다. 네, 그 다음에 이혜영 회장님 감사드리고 유양아 회장님 고맙습니다. 네. 그 다음에 우리 제양군인의 장경석 회장님 저 뒤에 앉아 계시네. 예, 고맙고요. 그 옆에 썸박 상공회의소 회장님 감사합니다. 그 다음에 우리 나상호 회장님 또 연세가 많으신데도 아직도 열심히 일하고 계십니다. 예, 그리고 우리 오영록 전 회장님, 박영석 전 회장님, 최병일 직전 29대 동남부 회장님 또 많이 오셨고 감사드리고요. 우리 또 신철수 우리 고문님 또 송승철 회장님이시죠? 예? 예. 어거스타 회장님이셨는데 죄송합니다. 제가 이름을 잘못해서 하여튼 여러분들 많이 하고 또 특히 우리 권유환 체육회장님도 오셔가지고 자리 빛내주시고 계신데 오늘 우리 수잔 솔티 여사께서 강연하시는 좋은 내용 들으시고 또 북한 인권에 대해서 다시 한번 생각하는 그런 시간이 됐으면 합니다. 여러분 감사합니다.
Thank you so much.
저희가 축사하실 분들이 좀 많아가지고 저희가 우리 북미주 자유소에서 그동안 많이 활동을 하셨던 두 분은 강연이 끝나고 축사를 하는 걸로 순서를 바꿨습니다. 다음은 그레이트 코리아 미주본부 곽인환 회장의 축사가 있겠습니다.
Alright, the next one is the remark speech. The next is the president of the Korean American Associations in Great Atlanta in USA, Kwak In-han.
안녕하십니까. 저는 그레이트 코리아 미지 대표 곽인환입니다. 저는 한국에서 돌아온 지 얼마 안 됐습니다. 그래 시차 관계로 좀 피곤하기는 하지만은 이곳 애틀랜타 여기 한인회관에서 제가 오늘까지 5번째 맞이하는 행사이고 또 애틀랜타 동포 여러분들은 저희 이웃 사촌 같은 느낌이 들었기 때문에 피곤도 무릅쓰고 멀리 3시간 이상 비행기를 타고 애틀랜타에 와 보니 정말 애틀랜타 동포 형제 자매님들 뵈니 너무도 기쁘고 반갑습니다. 더군다나 제가 오니까 김광수 회장님께서 자기 집에서 숙식을 제공해 주셔서 더욱더 감사드립니다. 또한 멀리에서 오신 우리 미국 한인회 총회장 정명훈 회장님 오셔서 감사드리고 수잔 솔트 박사님 오셔서 감사드립니다. Welcome to over here. 오케이. 지금 북한에서는 김일성의 주체 사상이라는 이데올로기를 내세워 김일성, 김정일, 김정은의 3대 세습 공산 독재 체제를 유지하기 위해 주민들의 생활을 감시 통제하고 있으며 특히 근래에는 동토의 땅에서 식량난마저 심각하여 자유 대한민국의 50년대 보릿고개 때보다도 더 심각하다고 합니다. 그럼에도 김정은은 기아에 허덕이고 있는 북한 주민들의 생활에는 아랑곳하지 않고 김일성의 유일 독재 지배체제를 유지하기 위해서 핵개발에만 모든 경제를 쏟아붓고 있으며 주민들의 눈과 귀를 가리기 위해 언론의 자유, 거주의 자유, 참정권마저도 억압하고 주민들은 생존권마저도 보장받지 못하고 있는 실정입니다. 이렇게 세계에서 유일하게 억압받고 있는 북한 주민들의 인권을 곧바로 해결하기란 그리 쉽지는 않습니다. 그러나 북한 주민들도 우리들의 동족이기에 그들이 자유로운 삶을 보장하기 위해서 자유민주의 가치 위에서 자유민주 평화 통일을 이루어 우리와 함께 자유를 만끽하며 살아갈 수 있도록 반드시 해결해야 할 과제라고 생각합니다. 그런데도 지난 김대중, 노무현, 문재인 정권에서는 북한 주민들의 인권 문제와 기아 문제에 관심보다 자신들의 정치적 이용을 위해서 햇빛 정책 또는 퍼주기식 정책으로 북한은 오늘과 같은 핵개발을 할 수 있게 하였으며 그로 인해 대한민국과 미국 등이 위험 상태까지 협박받고 있으니 이러한 반국가적 행위를 한 것에 대해서는 반드시 김대중, 노무현, 문재인 전직 대통령들에게 그 책임을 묻지 않을 수가 없습니다. 이제부터 우리 동포들은 윤석열 대통령 정부의 자유민주평화통일 정책을 지지하며 다 함께 동참하여 북한 주민들의 인권 문제에 기여할 수 있는 우리 모두가 되기를 소원합니다. 이제 3일 후면 추수감사절에는 여러분들의 가정과 북한 주민들의 가정에도 하나님의 축복이 함께 하시기를 기원합니다. 감사합니다.
Thank you so much, President of the all Great Korea, Mr. Kwon.
예, 다음은 애틀랜타 한인회 이용규 회장님 오늘 출석하셨는데 갑자기 사업장에서 사고가 발생해서 이 자리를 좀 떠나시고 대신 이경성 이사장님께서 축사를 대신하겠습니다.
The next, the congratulatory speech will be delivered by Chairman of the Korean American Association in Great Atlanta, 이경성.
여러분 안녕하십니까? 저는 35대 체어맨 이경성입니다. 감사합니다. 이렇게 애틀랜타를 여러분 방문해 주셔서 수잔서울대 초청강연회 오신 여러분께 우선 심심한 감사의 말씀을 올려드립니다. 한국 사회의 어려움과 인권 중심의 공정과 상식에서 양반든 한반도에서 이제 모두 하나가 되어 각자의 역할과 책임을 충실히 이행함으로써 우리가 기대하는 통일과 더불어 북미주 자유수호연합회에 감사의 말씀을 또한 올려드립니다. 이 행사로 해서 온갖 열정으로 헌신하시는 여러분에게도 의료의 말씀을 드리며 헌신과 사랑으로 자랑스러운 코리안 아메리칸으로서 자부심을 갖고 하나된 미래의 한국인의 정체성과 긍지를 모아 승리하기를 소망합니다. 여러분 가정과 모든 하시는 후에 우리 자유수호연합을 위해서 또 헌신하시는 자유를 위해서 자유를 몸바쳐 헌신하신 여러분께 다시 한번 감사의 말씀드리고 애틀랜타 오신 것을 진심으로 환영합니다. 감사합니다.
Thank you so much, Mr. Lee.
예, 다음은 기네텍 부학장이신 멜번 에버슨 씨를 소개하겠습니다. 인권에 많은 관심을 갖고 계시다고 말씀하시네요.
The next speech will be delivered by the Melvin Everson. is the Vice President of the Gwinnett Technology College and also his former state representative, the House representative.
Good evening. As stated earlier, Melvin Everson, former member of the Georgia House of Representatives and former appointee of Governor Deal, where I led the Georgia Commission of Human Employment. And we entertained delegations from all over the United States coming to Georgia to talk to us about human rights and how important it is for us to ascribe to those 5 basic principles of human rights. And that is the right to liberty, freedom from slavery and torture, freedom of opinion and expression, the right to work and education, and the right to have freedom of religion. And I can tell you, having entertained delegations from Sri Lanka, Korea, South Africa, and all across the United States and all across the globe, I can tell you how important it is for everyone to be treated with dignity and respect. And I want to thank you for the efforts you've done, because my church has always had the mission going to North Korea, secret endeavor there to reach out to those individuals that have been suffering from human rights violations in that country. So thank you so much for what you do, and thank you all so much for this opportunity. And to all of you, keep up the great work, because the battle is just beginning, and we're there with you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr.
예, 다음은 조지아주 48지구 주 상원의원이신 션 스틸 의원을 소개하겠습니다.
The next speech will be delivered by Sean Steele. He is the new state senator in District 48. Stage is yours.
Thank you for having me. I'll just speak for a moment, but I want to speak on 2 very important topics. Number one, on behalf of my entire campaign team, many of you supporters are here. Our state Senate district represents the largest concentration of Korean Americans in the state of Georgia. So it is going to be one of our absolute top priorities to make sure that we're meeting with leaders from your community, not just during campaign season, but throughout the entire legislative calendar and beyond, to make sure that we're best representing your needs and your concerns. 2 of those major concerns are this. Number one, Governor Kemp and First Lady Marty Kemp are absolutely committed with our Attorney General Chris Carr to ensure that we are doing everything that we can, using the full resource of our state government and police, to make sure that we are doing everything we can to put an end to human trafficking in our state. Georgia is number 7 in the country for human trafficking, and we have got to put an end to it once and for all. The second thing, if I could, just for a moment of personal privilege. Education is one of our top concerns. If I could just ask the audience, if you have a child or a grandchild who is either in school or has already graduated college, does anybody have a family member who has used the Hope Scholarship here in Georgia? Anybody with kids using Hope? The Hope Scholarship has been threatened by some who seek to make it need-based and taking away from those who have earned it on a merit base. What that means is the kids who have gone to school, worked hard, studied hard, gotten great grades, are very concerned that that scholarship may not be there as they were promised throughout their childhood. And it is critically important that we lead on this issue. As a new state senator, I do not yet know what committees that they will assign me on, but the number one committee that I've asked for is education, because 1 in 3 schools in our state are failing. And so if we don't have school choice, if we don't have the guarantee that our children are going to be able to get merit-based scholarships when they graduate, then we will not be the leader in education that we want to be. On a final note, I'd like to read everyone the inscription that's actually on my watch band, because I think it perfectly sets up the stage for our speaker tonight. And this watch is The brand is Hamilton, one of our founding fathers of our country. You may have heard of Alexander Hamilton. He had a son named Patrick Hamilton. And inscripted in the band, it says, "Without liberty, life is misery." And if we think about that, and we think about how that relates to freedom and liberty and human trafficking, that our forefathers in this country thought of this even over 200 years ago. And then this is still a problem that we're fighting today to help others that are imprisoned with this. So thank you for the opportunity. I am so looking forward to our speaker tonight. Thank you for having me. Thank you for all your support. I look forward to talking to you soon.
우리 새로 계신 미주본부와 48세기 찬스 주셨습니다. 세 가지를 얘기해 주셨는데요. First one은 조지아 브랜캠프에서 와이프 되시는 분이 휴먼 트래피킹, 우리 인신매매에 관련된 그거에 대해서 굉장히 많은 일을 하고 계시거든요. 그래서 그걸 서포트하시더라고요. 두 번째는 우리가 지금 말씀하신 것처럼 우리 스쿨 초이스, 우리가 가지고 있는 자유와 이런 것들이 그걸 위해서 이 조지아의 보면 홈스칼라십이라고 하는데, 홈스칼라십이 공부 잘하고 이렇게 열심히 하는 학생이 주어져야 되는 그런 문제가 많은데, 그거에 대한 이슈도 얘기하셨고, 에듀케이션이 얼마나 중요하고, 그 다음에 모든 이런 우리가 인권을 잘 가지고 할 수 있는 것도 애들한테 교육이 잘 돼야 됩니다. 그래서 그거에 대해서 열심히 일하시겠다고 하셨거든요. 그래서 지금 시기 사고 있는 것도 유명한 그 말씀에 대한 프리덤에 대한 그런 시기에 이렇게 여기 문구가 있는 거를 차고 다니실 정도로 휴먼 라이트라든지 어떤 인권에 대해서 굉장히 많이 주장하고 싶으시니까 이번에 기회가 좋으니까 새로 계셨으니까 우리가 많은 얘기를 먼저 나눌 수 있으면 참 좋은 기회가 될 것 같습니다. 많은 말씀하시는데 제가 주의를 하고 조금 네네 이해해 주셨으면 감사하겠습니다.
네, 다음은 제29대 미주 한인회 총연합회 정명훈 회장의 축사 말씀 드리겠습니다. 정명훈 회장은 꼭 미주총연 회장으로 심석하기보다는 제가 설명을 드렸더니 우리 수자솔기여사하고 10여 년 넘게 같이 인권운동을 하셨대요. 그래서 잘 아시기 때문에 친분도 있고 해서 오늘 달라스에서 오셔가지고 지금 막 도착을 해서 오늘 축사를 해주시겠습니다.
The 29th president of the Korean American Association in the United States will be doing it for you. She has had a several years relationship with Dr. Susan, and that she's going to introduce Dr. Susan.
안녕하세요. 진심으로 반갑습니다. 제29대 미주 한인회 총연합회 정명훈 인사드립니다. 저는 조지아에 예전에도 왔었고 해서 정말 반가운 분들 많이 보니까 정말 기쁘고 즐겁습니다. 이번 땡스기빙도 좋은 시간 보내시고요. 이번에 좀 영어로 스피치를 해달라고 해가지고 제가 영어로 하겠습니다. I am very delighted to see you, Suzanne, Dr. Suzanne Schulte. She has been promoting North Korean human rights for more than 2 decades. And she traveled to South Korea every year. So she has already celebrated 19 NKFW in South Korea in October. So her passion is to bring the North Korean human rights that who are suffering there with where they have no respect for their human lives, and they are going through all this hunger, and also they have no right to speak for their freedom, and so many are oppressed. And she has passion that someday South Korea and North Korea will be one country and find a peaceful resolution. And during the Moon's administration of their sunshine policy, that a lot of them got stopped. However, we have great hope because we have new administration. So due to that new administration, we find the hope. So I want everyone to join together that how significant and important this North Korean human rights, because they have to be protected and they have their own rights to contribute to all these North Korean defectors to come to the United States or to South Korea. So we must welcome them with warm hands. That way that they can find a place here. And also someday that we need to all pray together that this must be stopped once for all. The third generation curse, Kim Jong-il and Kim Il-sung and Kim Jong-un. As you can see in the Bible, that the generation curse is stopped by the third generation. So next year is the 70th year of the Emeritus where they signed. So hopefully that something miracle will happen in our country, that we will be one together one day. So Suzanne, I'm really proud that you've been doing this, and your seed was planted like a mustard seed. But one day it will move the mountain, and one day South Korea and North Korea will be united and become very powerful country to bring the peace to this world. So everyone join together for that prayer. Thank you so much.
Thank you, President.
예, 다음은 드디어 귀중한 시간입니다. 우리 인권운동가 관장에 계신 수잔 솔티 여사의 강연이 있겠습니다. 앞으로 나오시는 동안 우리 박수기 위원장께서 잠깐 우리 수잔 솔티 여사에 대한 프로필을 소개하겠습니다.
I'm honored to be introduced to you. Dr. Susan, could you come up the stage? Dr. Susan Solt is the American human rights activist. She is the president of the Defense Forum Foundation. She's also the vice co-chair of the U.S. Committee for the Human Rights in the North Korea and the chairman of the Free North Korea Radio. She has received many awards, including the Seoul Peace Prize in the 2008 and the Walter Judge Freedom Award in the 2010, and Order of the Diplomatic Service Merit Sunni Medal from the Republic of Korea in 2013. Center's Peace and the Social Justice Award in 2014, and the Volunteer Service Gold Award from the President of the United States in 2014. So many contribute for the South Korea and the North Korea. And finally, we're going to have a lecture for tonight. Thank you so much. Stage is yours.
Well, thank you so much to President Kim Il-hong and the North America Korean Freedom Keeping League, I love that name, for inviting me to be the keynote speaker today. I have a lot to share, but we'll keep to 30 minutes so we have time for any questions. My plan is to address three main things to answer the question, what should be done regarding North Korea and peaceful unification? The North Korea human rights crisis overall, important changes that have happened internally in North Korea, and most important, what we should be doing in response. Today, we have an ongoing global conflict that's intensifying all over the world over the value of human life. On one side, you have people who believe that we are born with God-given rights, that each life has value and meaning, in fact, that we are fearfully and wonderfully made. On the other side of this global battle, you have people who have no regard for human life. They see human life as something meant to serve an ideology, a regime, or even as a person. There's no dignity or worth in mankind, and most assuredly no dignity or worth in womankind or childhood. Whether it's communism or Kim Jong-ilism, there's a common theme. Individual life has little value or meaning. North Korean women have told me that their value in North Korea was the equivalent value of a fly. The Korean Peninsula is a vivid illustration of this worldwide conflict, with the people of South Korea living in a vibrant liberal democracy that has become the 11th largest economy in the world, and North Korea, often called the world's biggest prison, a place where people are enslaved and isolated by a dictator who is their God. You know that North Korea is the only country in the world where the citizens do not enjoy a single human right, as enshrined in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. It's a tragic irony that this document was passed in 1948 by the UN in reaction to the atrocities committed by Nazi Germany and Imperial Japan during World War II. 1948 is also the year grandfather Kim Il-sung came to power to ensure that North Koreans would not enjoy a single one of these human rights. We have seen the death and devastation that has meant for Koreans born north of the DMZ. For decades, many have tried to focus attention on the horrible political prison camps where even children are imprisoned. The slave laborers in Russia and China and other nations, the trafficking and exploitation of North Korean women, and the everyday horrendous conditions North Koreans have lived under because of the Triple Kim family dictatorship. Yet it took the bravery of over 35,000 North Koreans to escape, to tell their stories that finally led to the full awareness of the horrors occurring there. Based on their testimonies, even the United Nations in their North Korea inquiry had to conclude in February 2014 that the Kim regime in North Korea was committing unspeakable atrocities and crimes against humanity. That the gravity, scale, and nature of these violations reveal a state that does not have any parallel in the contemporary world. When the full scale of the atrocities committed by Nazi Germany against the Jewish people were realized, the international community vowed never again would the world stand by. I often wear this Holocaust remembrance pin as a reminder that for North Koreans, the words never again ring hollow, because it is happening again. Tragically, for decades, our governments have emphasized the nuclear threat from North Korea and not the horrific human rights violations. This has been a huge and deadly mistake. It has taken the human rights movement 25 years to finally put human rights at the forefront. The mistake made about focusing on the nuclear issue and ignoring the human rights tragedy was twofold. Our government held to the false belief that North Koreans would give up their nuclear program. That was never possible. Hwang Jong-yap, the highest ranking defector from North Korea, repeatedly warned us starting in 1997 when he defected. North Korea will use negotiations to extract concessions, but they will never give up their nuclear program. Human rights is the issue. It is their Achilles heel. That is what the highest ranking North Korea defector kept telling us. And hundreds more since have said the same thing. Secondly, focusing on the nuclear issue fed into the North Korea regime's narrative that the regime used to use to justify their nuclear program. This is so important because Kim tells his people, sorry you have to go without, but I'm protecting you from those evil American Yankee imperialist wolves that occupy South Korea and want to destroy you. When we fail to raise our concerns about the suffering North Koreans endure, we feed that lie, that powerful lie. Now, what are the important changes that have happened internally in North Korea? There have been 3 important changes since the famine because of the people of North Korea: markets, information, and eyewitnesses. Because of Kim Jong-un's draconian measures during COVID and Moon Jae-in's help for the regime during his administration, we have lost a lot of ground in recent years. But I want to address these changes. First, our markets, which resulted from the breakdown of the public distribution system, which was the way the regime distributed food and material goods using the elaborate Sungbun classification system of regime loyalty. For example, elites may have had access to rice. The less loyal may have gotten corn. The same applied to material goods. The system made the entire population completely dependent on the regime for survival. But the system broke down completely in the 1990s, which triggered the massive starvation, the Arduous March. Nothing was being provided, and men still had to go to work, but did not get paid. So out of sheer desperation to feed their children, their husbands, their parents, it was the women of North Korea that changed everything. They became capitalists. They started trading and selling in their communities, and this led to an explosion of private markets throughout North Korea, to such an extent that the majority of the population now survives on their own through these markets. Through their own self-determination, North Koreans became capitalists and free marketers. Attempt after attempt by the regime to shut down these markets and then to try to control these markets repeatedly failed. In December 2009, the regime tried to shut down a growing middle class by a currency devaluation, by issuing new currency, and essentially wiping out everyone's savings. The regime was attempting to reassert control, but there was such an overwhelming hostile reaction from the people, Kim Jong-il, the dictator at the time, had to back down. The regime blamed it all on an official named Pak Nam-gil, had him executed, apologized, and moved on. This was an amazing turn of events. North Korean women pushing back against the regime not only apologizing, but officially acknowledging their own failure and letting the market system continue. A CSIS study from a few years ago found at least 436 officially sanctioned markets located across the country. And in a microsurvey project in provinces across North Korea, they found that 72% of respondents received almost all their household income from markets. Additionally, 83% of respondents found outside goods and information to be of greater impact on their lives than decisions by the North Korea regime. Before COVID, Free North Korea Radio reported there were close to 5,000 markets all around North Korea, including micro-sized local grasshopper markets which hop around. Now the regime has accepted the existence of these markets, and the elites are doing what they can to personally benefit from them. The famine not only led to these private markets, but it also led to the people no longer trusting the regime. Defectors tell us that in the past, it was every citizen's strong desire to become a member of the Korean Workers' Party, the path to success in North Korea. But their goals started to change as their desire was to make money to provide for their families. Second huge change, the information explosion. Part of the ability of the regime to remain in power is its ability to isolate and brainwash its citizens. North Koreans had learned a lot about South Korea and the outside world through the abundance of South Korean soap operas and Western films that have illegally flowed into North Korea. More and more North Koreans were listening to foreign radio broadcasts, watching South Korean soap operas and Western films. They knew the regime had been lying to them. Defectors have told me that the Western film Titanic became so widely watched in North Korea that the regime felt compelled to respond. As you know, in this film, a man gives his life to save the woman he loves. This concept, to value another's life, is something revolutionary for North Koreans, as North Koreans are literally slaves who owe their undying allegiance to the dictator. North Koreans who watched that movie saw something that was foreign to them, the concept of sacrificing for another out of love, that human life has value. The regime had to respond to this, and through their propaganda, some brilliant North Korea propagandists came up with this response. The movie Titanic was not so much a love story, but was a depiction of the failure of capitalism, because the great ship Titanic, symbolizing capitalism, sunk on the same day of Kim Il-sung's birthday, April 15, 1912. In 2015, the Mad Max film Fury Road became very popular, which is great because it shows a female heroine bringing down a dictator. And it's North Korean females who represent the greatest number of defectors. It's estimated that until Moon Jae-in became president of South Korea, over 60% of North Koreans were getting information beyond the regime's propaganda. The flow of information was undermining the regime's lie. It convinced the North Koreans they were the most advanced nation living in a wonderful paradise. Before the COVID pandemic and the border closure, North Koreans were secretly loving South Korean soap operas and K-pop music, and were even adopting South Korean hairstyles and using South Korean terms. There was a joke that you could realize someone had been secretly watching Crash Landing on You if they ever mentioned fried chicken, because the North Korean citizen may have chicken once in their lifetime on their wedding day. The thought of eating fried chicken so freely is completely alien to them, something only South Koreans can do. Now, according to a recent small survey of 50 people in North Korea and 100 recent defectors conducted secretly by Unification Media Group, 96% of respondents viewed foreign content, including Crash Landing on You and Squid Game. This is despite a crackdown by the regime with the passage of the Anti-Reactionary Thought Law in December 2020, which called for hard labor to death for watching videos or singing K-pop music. There's a report of students actually being executed for watching foreign videos. But this shows you the regime was losing control of the minds of the people because of information. Something else has happened that has dramatically changed the situation, and that is the eyewitnesses. There's nothing that Kim regime fears more than those who've escaped. It is why they go to such great lengths to silence the voices of the defectors, stopping them from escaping through China and going so far as to send assassins to South Korea to kill the most outspoken defectors. Many of the over 35,000 North Koreans who have escaped up until COVID were communicating regularly with their family members back in North Korea. But escapees in South Korea are still paying brokers to communicate to their loved ones in North Korea, despite the risk, despite the costs. I also believe that it was the activism of the North Korean defector population during the last presidential election that gave Yoon Suk-yeol his margin of victory. They worked their hearts out because they knew what was at stake for South Korea's future, having lived under Moon's repression, which stripped them of support and deprived all Koreans of some of their civil rights. Now, what should we be doing to address all of this? First of all, prayer. It's a powerful weapon. Many people believe that the Berlin Wall came down as the result of the weekly prayer services Reverend Christian Führer started as the pastor of St. Nikolai Evangelical Lutheran Church in Leipzig, Germany in 1980, when Germany was still divided between communist East Germany and democratic West Germany. Because Kim has set himself up as a god, Christianity is among the greatest threats to this regime, and thus North Korean Christians are the most persecuted people in the world. But we know the church is alive in North Korea, though they have to worship secretly, which makes it even more important for churches in free countries to organize prayer for North Koreans. Many churches have heeded that call. Just one example is the Esther Prayer Movement, based out of South Korea, that is mobilizing prayer all over the world. They even have a weekly prayer service at the Lincoln Memorial in Washington, D.C. every Tuesday. We must be the prayer warriors for North Koreans. Number two, save the lives of the refugees. We need to save the lives of those in immediate danger by rescuing refugees in China and other countries. We estimate right now there are 600 children, women, and men currently detained in China that we're trying to get to South Korea. Because they escaped North Korea at a time when it was more difficult than ever to get out of North Korea, these refugees are in especially grave danger if they're repatriated back to North Korea. They had to have the means to cross the border since the crackdown and border closure. In other words, they had to have the financial resources. Thus, they are North Koreans who had status or North Koreans who had family members in South Korea financing their escape. This means if they are forcefully repatriated by China back to North Korea, they face execution. It is critical for the international community to call upon China to consider that these North Koreans are citizens of South Korea under the Constitution and to ask China for humanitarian consideration. Allow them safe passage to South Korea for resettlement. Since the border is still closed, we have this window where their lives can be saved. We know of a miracle that happened in November last year with a family of 4 that were flown from China directly to South Korea because they prayed to God for just such a miracle. We had been advocating for that family with the Moon administration, and now they are free and thriving in South Korea. Number 3, never again sideline human rights. What did the administration of Moon Jae-in gain by ignoring the suffering in North Korea and ripping down the loudspeakers at the DMZ and banning balloon launches? More missile launches and nuclear tests. It's especially important now that we do not lose sight of the people of North Korea during this time of escalating threats by the Kim regime. The Korean Institute of Defense Analysis estimates that what the Kim regime has spent on its nuclear program over the last 50 years could cover North Korea's food shortages for 4 years. Number 4, relaunch the information campaign. The information campaign was being won by the work of the North Korean defectors with the support of previous South Korean governments that believed in freedom and peaceful unification. This information campaign was so successful that by 2018, the people of North Korea were more knowledgeable than ever before about the outside world. But the Moon administration made a deal with Kim Jong-un, and at the behest of Kim Yo-jong, intentionally plunged North Korea back into darkness. Not just shutting off the loudspeakers of the DMZ, but ripping them down and banning the balloon launches and the rice bottle launches. In the closing months of the Moon administration, he was going to try to end radio broadcasting to North Korea. The loudspeakers at the DMZ reached 70% of North Korea's ground forces and 50% of their air and naval forces as they are deployed within 100 kilometers of the DMZ. No wonder Kim Jong-un demanded that loudspeakers be taken down. The anti-leafleting law must be overturned because it violates South Korea's constitution and South Korea's international treaty obligations. Instead, we should be doing everything we can to get information into North Korea by land, by air, and by sea. We must communicate to the people in power in Pyongyang they have friends and allies in Korea and America who have one and only one desire for them, to share with them the benefits of a free people, to give them a life of hope instead of despair. Those in leadership positions in the DPRK regime wake up in the morning with only 2 choices in their lives: being slaves devoted to the Kim Jong-un, or death and their family's death. We must communicate to North Koreans the fact that free societies with human rights thrive, and as Hwang Jong-yap, the creator of the Juche religion, used to say, that the miracle on the Han that is in South Korea can be the miracle of the Taedong River if North Koreans are freed of the brutal slavery of the Kim regime. North Koreans were starting to learn these truths because so much information was getting into North Korea. That's why so many began escaping, not just for food, but for freedom, for a better life, to follow their dreams. We win or lose on our ability to communicate truth to people in North Korea. My foundation is involved in all aspects of the information campaign. We would love to have you partner with us. For example, freedom-loving Americans financed 100% of the shortwave transmission of Free North Korea Radio, which is 100% staffed by North Korean escapees. It broadcasts news, true history, and information, and the gospel to North Korea every morning and every evening. We like to boast we are sharing the news and the good news. I brought some flyers for anyone who may be interested in learning more about Free North Korea Radio. Finally, I want to show you what Kim Jong-un fears. I want to show you what he has threatened to nuke. First, this is a rice bottle. Why is Kim terrified of these rice bottles? It has the Word of God. The Bible is right there. That's what's on the left side of the rice bottle. The Bible, and Kim fears God more than anything because he set himself up as God. Rice, of course, is in that bottle to feed starving North Korean families. Kim wants them dependent on him and living as slaves. There's flash drives. The flash drives we sent in recently contain messages from 25 members of Congress, Democrats and Republicans, sending their love and encouragement and concern for the people of North Korea. These messages have struck at the heart of the lies of the regime that tells the people of North Korea that we are their enemy, when all Americans care about is their suffering. Other flash drives have included the Bible, Korean soap operas, K-pop music, and Western movies. Medicine is also in these. Most recent rice bottles have contained aspirin, vitamins, and parasite medicine. Money, a US $1 bill. I'm not sure what the value is today, but it's still a significant amount in the market. It used to be able to feed a family of 4 for a week before COVID. I don't know if they have the picture of these are rice bottles. This is a rice bottle launch. These are rice bottles floating in to North Korea. In photo 3, I want to show you, the next photo 3 is what we sent in recently. This has got, you can see the medicines, the vitamins, all those flash drives you see, US $1 bills, all those flash drives, those are messages from members of the US Congress to the people of North Korea. Now that's rice bottles, but what about balloon launches? The defectors have been sending in leaflets letting North Koreans have access to true information about South Korea. The fact that it elected a new president. The photo 4 is one of the balloon launches they did to let people know that South Korea elected a new president. The fact that Kim Jong-un murdered a lot of warbeer, his uncle and his half-brother, those are things that have gone in by the balloon launches. True facts about life in South Korea and how North Koreans prosper in freedom. Also money, the US $1 bill, as I mentioned, very valuable in the market, and shortwave radios. Martin Williams, one of the leading experts on information in North Korea, wrote on October 6, 2022, shortwave and medium wave broadcasting remains an important method of reaching North Koreans, even while it's disappearing elsewhere in the world. Photo 5 is the shortwave radio that we're trying to send in. It's a shortwave radio. It's manufactured in China and can be powered by solar, hand crank, and by batteries. We need to get more of these into North Korea because this is the most proven method for getting information to North Koreans. We just launched a project to get hundreds of these to North Korean women in China and hope to use this as a launching pad to get thousands into North Korea. The most effective tool we have is the North Korean escapees, so we need to partner with them in these methods. Again, these are just a few examples of things that we're doing right now that you can help us with because it's freedom-loving Americans financing the North Korean escapees projects. Americans paid 100% of the cost of the most recent balloon and the most recent rice bottle launches through our foundation. And our Free North Korea radio program is the most popular radio broadcast going into North Korea based on interviews with North Koreans. And its website ranks in the top 5 in South Korea. We are outperforming media entities with 14 times our budget. In conclusion, I want to tell you about a Christian woman named Kathy Walters who reached out to me about a powerful dream she had. She did not know anything about North Korea, but she had this dream of praying hands coming out of the dirt. In the dream, God told her those were the martyrs of Korea who loved God more than their own lives. She did not know anything about North Korea, but she went online and did a search about North Korea, and she found my contact information and reached out to me. Kathy wrote to me what God had spoken to her. Those who were martyred and killed and tortured because of their love for me are not forgotten. And although the dark powers came to cover my light, they shall be broken and moved. And the holy things the enemy tried to bury shall rise in power. People will be stunned because of sudden freedom. Sudden freedom. I truly believe that we are at that point, but we must do our part in this battle. So let's work together to save the refugees and the prisoners in North Korea. Let's support the North Koreans living in freedom to be able to reach our brothers and sisters in North Korea living in enslavement so that they will enjoy freedom soon. Freedom, God's gift to all of us. And the words I know best in Korean are 아버지 자유복am. I'm happy to take questions. I tried to leave time. If anybody wants questions.
사실 샨솔티 여사께서 저희는 1박 2일 일정으로 참석을 할 줄 알았는데 오늘 11시 일본 비행기로 도착했다 9시 15분 비행기로 다시 워싱턴 DC로 돌아갔어요. 그래서 짧은 일정 동안 많은 시간을 소화했어요. 점심 때 총영사관 주최 오찬을 참석을 하셨고 또 교회 일찍 오신 11시에 도착해서 또 교회 가셔서 또 예배를 또 드리고 오셨어요. 이렇게 밝고 일정한 상황인데 저희가 몇 분만 공개 질의응답을 받도록 하겠습니다. 뭐 많은 시간을 할애할 수는 없지만 혹시라도 궁금해서 질문사항이 있으시면은 한국어로 말씀해 주시면 저희 사이먼석께서 영어로 또 대신 질문을 해드릴 수도 있으니까 어려움 갖지 마시고 궁금하신 점 있으면 질문을 해주시면 감사하겠습니다.
This is in the question time, and so she has a flight at 9 o'clock. And so 9 o'clock, and so we don't have that much time, but we have several, maybe 2 or 3 questions if you want to do. And then Simon's going to volunteer to the translated English and Korean and English. So.
Yeah, I have to confess that I hope I kept it to 30 minutes, but I have a Fitbit. And I've never been able to, I went to Korea and it got programmed and it went to South Korean time, but when I came back, I couldn't get it to reprogram to American time, so I don't have a watch on. So I thought, I hope I kept it 30 minutes.
Oh, okay.
This is what happens when you don't have a teenager in the house. You can't figure these things out.
All right. 질문 있으시면 저기.
앞으로 나오셔도 앞쪽으로는 걸어 나와주세요.
지금 이제 제가 이제 나가 있는 몇 명의 그 탈북민하고 지금 교제를 사실 하고 있는데 그분들 들어보니까 대부분 탈북하시는 분이 러시아나 중국을 간단 말이에요. 근데 거기서 또 많은 잘못된 그 에이전트들을 만나서 힘든 생활도 굉장히 하고 어떤 사람들은 이제 죽기까지 하는 그런 일들이 있는데 이거를 도울 수 있는 인터내셔널 무슨 리거 시스템이라든가 아니면 인터내셔널 뭐 변호사라든가 이래서 도울 수 있는 어떤 그런 게 있나. 왜냐하면 러시아나 중국은 어차피 그 북한과 친하기 때문에 다시 그 사람들 디폴트 하거든요. 그래서 그런 얘기를 들었을 때 좀 마음이 아팠는데 그런 시스템이 있는지.
I have several North Korean defectors that I have a relationship with in South Korea, and most of them they are talking about when they escape from China, they are hiding in China and Russia, but sometimes they are meeting wrong brokers, and because of that, they can even be killed or retrieved back to North Korea. So is there any system that we can help those North Korean defectors in Russia or China?
Absolutely. There are groups, and we should definitely talk later, there's groups that absolutely trust that are engaged in this, and the ones that are the most trustworthy are the ones that actually work directly with other North Koreans. There's groups that have success. I know one woman, she's a North Korean woman. I call her the Harriet Tubman of North Korea because she's rescued thousands. So let's talk privately, but there are groups that you can absolutely trust, but it's a very, very dangerous. But I want to mention the family I was talking about. Yesterday, the family that got out of China directly to Korea, that's one of the groups I work with, but yesterday was the anniversary of their 1 year of freedom.
러시아나 차이나 쪽에서 그 북한 사람들을 돕고 그런 사람들을 또 탈북시키는 그런 단체들이나 사람들이 많이 있습니다. 그래서 뭐 개인적으로 저한테 와서 얘기할 수도 있겠지만은 그런 사람들을 통해서 이 사람들이 안전하게 한국으로 올 수가 있습니다.
And that's for China. And you mentioned Russia also?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. We should talk, because we just got 5 people out of there, even though there's a war going on with Ukraine. But the UNHCR has been terrific in certain, they're terrible in China. They're not doing it in China, but they've been very effective in other places like Russia.
러시아에 지금 전쟁이 있지만은 아주 안전하게 탈북자 5명을 거기서 탈북을 시켰습니다. 그래서 이런 일들을 러시아 안에서도 할 수 있습니다.
To save the time, I will talk to the directly in English. In 1950, when I'm the veteran of the Korean War, in 1950, when we were retreating from North Korea, I remember the total population of the town in North Korea followed us. They chose the freedom rather than to be enslaved again by North Korean communists. The 70 years passed. Do you think that there is a kind of a different psychological attitude among the Korean between North Korean in 1950 and present day North Koreans? Thank you.
You're asking a different site. People, North Koreans in 1950 versus North Koreans, the way they think, yeah. Because of the brainwashing. But the thing is that if you, that's why information is so important. That's why because their minds can be changed. I want to talk about one young lady that works for North Korea. She was part of the market generation. She actually, her family were Korean Workers' Party members. They lived in Pyongyang, which means they were elites, because you can't live in Pyongyang unless you're elite. But she became a restaurateur. She's like the Bobby Flay of Pyongyang. But she was opening up all these restaurants because she was part of that market generation. But she told me that a really bright young woman, a real successful capitalist, but she told me that when Kim Jong-il died, she thought she was going to die. She couldn't understand why she was still walking around. Like, why didn't we all die? that's the brainwashing is so intense. But what happens when they get introduced to freedom and information, it just changes everything. And when you think about how when North Koreans are given the ability to prosper and given the support they need, everything changes. But yeah, the mindset of what was there in the 1950s versus now totally changed, but it can be completely changed back. That's why, again, the information campaign is so important, because they are brainwashing. Just one other thing I wanted to say. If you went into a kindergarten classroom in North Korea, you would see a mural on the wall of an American soldier stabbing with a bayonet a pregnant North Korean woman. That's what your kindergarten would see when they went to school every day. That's where the brainwashing starts. But Myung mentioned North Korea Freedom Week. North Korea Freedom Week begins every time with North Koreans going to the Korean War Memorial and laying a wreath. Okay, I understand these are North Koreans that were brainwashed that we were their enemy, brainwashed to hate us. They go to the Korean War Memorial and they lay a wreath and they pledge to honor the Americans that gave South Korea freedom, to devote their lives to honor their memory, to give North Korea freedom. So imagine that reversal in viewpoint. I hope that answered that question.
1950년대랑 지금 현재 북한 사람들의 그 생각들이 상당히 많이 바뀌었습니다. 그래서 그 북한 자유 방송을 하고 있는 어떤 탈북자 여성은 평양 쪽에서 식당을 많이 오픈하는 사람이었는데, 그분의 말이 김정일이가 죽었을 때 자기가 살아있는 것에 대해서 상당히 놀랬다고 합니다. 그 시 같은 사람이 죽었는데 우리가 다 같이 죽어야 되는데 죽지 않고 살아있는 것에 대해서 상당히 놀라면서 자유와 이런 것들이 있을 때 이게 다 바뀌는구나 하는 것이 오면서 많이 바뀌었다고 합니다. 그리고 지금 북한에서는 유치원 때부터 그 그림을 볼 때에 미국 군인이 북한 그 임신한 여성을 죽이는 그런 그림을 보면서 자랐기 때문에 미국에 대한 그런 그 원수 같은 마음이 있는데, 이 탈북자들이 한국에 와서 이제 그 전쟁 그 박물관에 가서 그 전쟁 때 죽었던 희생했던 미국 군인들이나 한국 군인들한테 꽃을 헌화를 바치면서 전하는 걸 볼 때 마인드가 굉장히 많이 바뀐 것을 저희들이 알 수 있습니다.
Thank you. Question for you. Have you seen any re-emphasis from the national level of this administration to further highlight the atrocities or human rights violation in North Korea?
From which administration? Biden?
Yes.
Yeah. I will say that the Biden administration gave a very, very strong statement for North Korea Freedom Week. Their words have been great. Their words have been great. But I've been disappointed they haven't appointed a special envoy yet for North Korean human rights. That's been troubling, because I realized that we needed to be patient, because it took Obama 9 months, it took George Bush 9 months, Trump never appointed one. So we were really patient, but now we've lost our patience. Biden needs to appoint a special envoy for North Korean rights. President Yoon appointed Ambassador Shin-Won Lee very quickly, and she's looking for an American counterpart to work together. And so I'm hoping that when the North Korean Human Rights Act passes in the Congress soon, I'm hoping it's going to pass during this lame duck session, that will put a little more pressure on the Biden administration. Their words have been great, but their actions haven't been. So we're trying to encourage them to be more active. And again, we're very blessed in the United States, because Democrats and Republicans are very united on this. Well, those messages that are going in are Democrats and Republicans that's giving those messages. So we're very blessed that both parties are very much focused and care about North Korean rights. I think the North Korean Rights Act, for example, is going to pass unanimously. So maybe that'll give a little boost to the Biden appointments that they did.
미국의 공화당이나 민주당은 여러 가지 다른 점이 있지만은 북한 인권에 대해서는 같은 생각을 갖고 있기 굉장히 강하게 북한 인권에 대해서 얘기는 하고 있지만은 아직까지 거기에 대표로 뽑는 이제 곧 미국 정부에서 포인트 퍼슨을 골라서 북한 인권에 대해서 더 강하게 얘기하려고 하는 것 같습니다.
네, 감사합니다. 네. 질문하신다고요? 예. 북한 미국운동 수고하시는 수잔솔티 여사님께 지금으로부터 감사드립니다. 저는 나름 양도의 은퇴 목사 신상규입니다. 수잔솔티 여사에 대해서는 이치 이름은 들어왔지만 오늘 직접 연설을 듣는 것은 처음입니다. 그래서 오늘 좀 어린아이와 같은 그런 질문을 좀 드려보려고 합니다. 수잔솔티 여사께서 북한 인권에 대해서 어떻게 해서 관심을 갖게 되시고 이 일을 시작하셨는지에 대해서 알고 싶고요. 이 일을 해나가시면서 가장 힘든 일이 무엇인지 그걸 알고 싶고요. 또 하나는 우리 여기 한국인 국민들이 수잔솔티 여사를 직접적으로 가장 가깝게 도와드려야 될 가장 급한 일들이 무엇인지 그것을 알고 싶습니다. 감사합니다.
I'm a pastor and I have heard about you many times, but this is first time I'm hearing about your lecture, and we really want to thank you for that. And my question is three questions. First, how you get into North Korea, the human rights active movement, and second, what was second? How we can help you practice as in here.
Well, the way I got involved, and should I pause for translation? The way I got involved was our foundation, the Defense Forum Foundation, was mostly focused on national security issues, and it's a bipartisan foundation, but when I became president, I realized that every country in the world that is a threat to peace is without exception a threat to their own people. And that it's fine to be concerned about America's strength, it's fine to advocate for that, but we also need to advocate for the people that are living under those dictatorships. So I started bringing people who defectors from Soviet Union at the time, China, Cuba, and all these different countries. And in 1996, I went to the South Korean embassy and I said, I'm hosting all these people from these communist countries, but we haven't heard from somebody from North Korea. And it took me a year of trying to persuade them that we should have North Koreans come and speak out, and that's what got me started. And I hosted the first North Korean defectors that had ever spoken out in the United States back in 1997. And since then I've hosted hundreds. And do you want me to pause for translation? Yeah. Okay. Well,
yeah. So 우리 수잔 서티님께서 1996년 전에 계속적으로 공산국에 있는 사람들을 많이 미국을 초청해서 도왔는데 북한에서 온 분이 한 분도 없었어갖고 그래서 이제 1997년도에 처음으로 이제 북한분을 만나게 되고 그걸 통해서 이제 많은 그 북한분들을 돕게 되었습니다.
So let me tell you let me finish up with the most important part of that answer. Okay? What's that?
How are they going to protect, help your foundation?
Oh, yeah.
In here,
take a look at that flyer.
Okay.
Defense Forum Foundation. But let me tell you, this is very important.
Right.
Okay. Why I keep doing this work. It's very important. it's been very hard. And in fact, there's a thing I carry around, I showed it earlier today. It's from editorial that was written by the Voice of America in April of 1999 after a hearing we had on the political prisoner camps. And there's an excerpt to it. And this particular editorial is about the North Korea political prisoner camps, the gulag of North Korea. But the State Department spiked it because they just had the four-party talks, and they said we need to do something positive, and because they just had the four-party talks, and they weren't sure it was defectors. We don't know if this is accurate, and I was the VOA reporter that wrote that editorial risked his job by faxing me. That was back in the day when we had fax machines. Risked his job to send me that, but he was so upset that they would not run the story because they were having the four-party talks. So we don't want to get everybody upset and talk about the North Korean political prisoner camps and all these horrible things because we're getting ready to have talks with them. I was so frustrated. I was praying and I cried out to God, why do I have to keep doing this? Do I really need to do this? It's so frustrating. I'm having nightmares because hearing the stories. And I heard God's voice. And he said, I was just answering your prayer. It was kind of defensive. I was just answering your prayer. And then I just went, oh my goodness, I remembered. I specifically prayed, God, break my heart for what is breaking your heart. A year before that, I prayed, God, break my heart for what's breaking your heart. And I knew, this is breaking God's heart. And that's the single most reason why I've been able to continue this work, despite everything that's happened. Yeah. God loves public displays of affection.
I would like to add to your lecture, being originally from Poland, I could find lots of elements to the situation in my country under the communist regime and the birthplace of solidarity movement. And I think that would help people in North Korea a lot to know that we took on the communist regime and we persevered. We got lots of help from the US. Myself, I was holding the Xerox copier at my house, for which I could be severely punished by the communist regime. And in the 80s, the more churches were built in Poland than in the entire world alone. Why? Because we crave God's word as much as the human body craves water. So this is so important to know. Let people know in North Korea that DNA of the birthplace of solidarity, where the simple people, simple workers, took out on the communist regime and they beat them. So that's I would like to share.
Yeah, well, you know what? Let's do this, okay? I would like to interview you for Free North Korea Radio.
I would love to.
We have a program. We have a program called Free North Korea Radio brings you your friends of the world, and we interview people from different countries to tell their stories and to tell them about their country, what their country's like, and then we ask them, how do you know about North Korea? And for example, we interviewed Justice Kirby from Australia, and he talked about Australia and about how their government operates, and then we said, well, how do you know about North Korea? And then he talked about, he was the chair of the UN Commission of Inquiry, and all the all the things he heard from all the testimonies. It's a great way to introduce North Korea to different countries. And I want to interview you about Poland. Yes. We interviewed a woman from Germany, talked about the fall of the Berlin Wall, and she wants that to happen for the DMZ.
collapse of Berlin Wall, and solidarity movement gave people the hope that was the catalyst that started it all.
Yeah.
We started all in Poland.
Yeah. So we're going to interview you, and you can talk all about that, and then your message will get to North Koreans.
네, 오늘 폴란드에서 공산주의 있을 때 많은 박해가 있었지만 그때 교회가 가장 많이 들어갔고 사람이 물이 필요한 것 같이 박해가 있을 때 하나님의 말씀은 물 같은 것 같이 많은 소용이 있었다고 합니다.
아까 말씀하신 것처럼 제일 중요한 게요. 아까 그 전단지 나눠주셨잖아요. 거기에 보면 이걸 100% 전부 다 도네이션으로 그 아까 하시는 모든 일을 다 하시고 계시거든요. 그래서 여러분들이 거기에 많이 참여하시고요. 여기서 어떤 분은 only $20 per month, 어떤 교회는 big only 45 in a church member인데 monthly에 $150 자꾸 보내주신대. 아주 country many years. 그래서 우리가 할 수 있는 거는 아주 가장 small money, we can support her in whatever she's doing right now. 그래서 그거 조금 참조하시면 참 좋을 것 같습니다. 그리고 지금 비행기 시간이 좀 빠듯해서요. 저희가 사진도 좀 찍고 마무리를 좀 해야 돼가지고 질문은 여기까지만, 오늘은 여기까지만 받겠습니다.
Yeah, you know what? I was going to say, if there's anybody, there's a pastor I was hoping that was coming. There was a couple of pastors we invited that are actually supporting Free North Korea Radio, and I don't know if any of you came, but I know that we have a young woman here who's a regular donor to Free North Korea Radio, Liz Saw. But if anybody, one of those pastors came, we were reaching out to you, please stand up. If any of them came, I don't know. There's Hinesville, Georgia. There's a pastor? No, I guess not. Well, Elizabeth, stand up. She's one of the monthly donors for Free North Korea Radio. But we have a retired school teacher in Pennsylvania that donates $10 a month. We have a church in Chattanooga, Tennessee. It's only got 40 members. They donate $200 a month. We've got a church out in California that donates $1,000 a month. So it's basically people all over the country that just whatever they can do. And we have stayed on the air every day since we started, since 2006.
아까 제가 말씀드린 교회에서 조그만 교회에서 $200 내시는 데도 있고 $150 내신다고 하시는 데도 있다고 말씀하셨거든요. The questions, Dr. Tony?
Thank you. You repeatedly mentioned that information, our information, is what they fear most, and that has historically been proven correct in all of the tyrannical regimes over the millennia. Is it possible for the Korean American Association to cross this nation and those very successful South Korean businessmen be prepared to offer something and convince our electronic manufacturers here in the United States and those very famous ones we purchased in South Korea to create a very simple radio that can be moved into North Korea, not by the hundreds or the thousands, by the tens of thousands, so that radio transmissions such as yours can be received. We can do this with hot air balloons. There are all kinds of ways to sneak them across the peninsula that they can't stop. I don't know where these electronic manufacturers are, but it would seem to me that we have something to utilize that we're not. And I would hope that you might give that some consideration and galvanize our friends here, friends across the country, and in South Korea, politics aside, to do that.
Well, you're absolutely right. But I will say the radio that we picked out is I hate to back communist country, but the radio we picked out that I showed a picture of, that's manufactured in China. You can get it on Amazon, by the way. But I interviewed a bunch of defectors and asked them to look at it and to get their read. They said, this is perfect. Because if they get caught with it, that's it right there. You're going to hold that up. If they get caught with that in North Korea, they won't get in trouble. The worst thing will happen is they may take it from them, but because it's made in China. But if we had something that was manufactured here or in South Korea, that's why we got to, unfortunately, buy them in China. So, but I got to tell you, but in support of what you just said, one of the most successful things that operation that was done, I believe it started, during President Lee Myung-bak's administration. President Lee partnered with some of the North Korean elites, and they started getting Notels into North Korea. It's exactly what you're talking about. The Notel was this computer, laptop, like small laptop computer, and it had multi-uses, like you could do flash drive, you could use a CD, you could do you could use different things to read data with it, and it became so popular. And remember, this was being the South Korean government working with defectors. There were so many of these in North Korea that the regime had to decriminalize owning one, because they would have had to lock up so many people. So it's exactly the point you're making. And we're looking at that too, but for right now we're trying to do the radio because we know they won't get arrested. But thank you, that's good.
I would just simply amend my inquiry by saying that why do we not have American and South Korean financial assistance to manufacture even greater numbers of these, if that's one way that we can.
Yeah.
That's what you're looking for then.
Yeah.
The power of the dollar matched with information.
Yeah.
And that will be most difficult for them to resist.
하나 더는요, 아까 말씀하신 것 좋은 포인트가 뭐냐면, 우리가 지금 윤 대통령님이 지금 여기 정부에서 하실 저게 뭐냐면, 지금 풍선 보내고 라디오 보내는 거 금지되어 있거든요. 그게 빨리 이번에 풀려서, 그러니까 불법이 아닌 정당하게 우리도 같이 할 수 있는 그런 게 좀 또 패스가 돼야 돼요. 그리고 그걸 위해서 또 기도 많이 하시고 일을 많이 하셨으니까 컨스티튜션 되는 그거를 언더 컨스티튜션 되는 그거가 패스가 돼야지 우리가 정말 자유롭게 더 북한에 더 많이 할 수 있거든요. 그래서 그거를 위해서 또 기도를 좀 해주시면 참 좋을 것 같습니다.
그동안 우리 시간 속에서 말씀드리느라 귀한 시간이었습니다. 아까 저희가 이제 낮에도 저희 정부를 대표했던 그 총사관하고 오찬할 때도 이야기가 나왔어요. 그러니까 수잔솔기 여사가 지난 정권 때 수많은 그 발의안을 계속 보냈대요. 근데 한 번도 답장을 못 받았대요. 근데 이제 윤석열 정부가 들어와서는 어떤 내로를 보내도 하나로 즉시 답이 왔대요. 그래서 본인도 굉장히 더 희망을 갖고 있다고 얘기를 해주셨고, 물론 최영사 입장에서 참 애매하죠. 답변을 하기가. 한데 지금 잠깐 얘기했다시피 저희가 대북전단이나 삐라 이게 모두 지금 지난 정부가 불법으로 했기 때문에 저희가 그거를 지금 실천을 못하고 있죠. 그래서 이번 정부에서 이제 그 법이 다시 원상 복귀가 되기를 희망하고 계시다고 이야기하시더라고요. 근데 아까도 어떤 목사님이 말씀하셨다시피 저도 그 질문을 했어요. 어떻게 해서 다른 많은 운동을 할 수 있는데 하필 북한 인권운동이냐 했더니 그냥 기도를 하는데 그냥 응답이 그랬대요. 그냥 북한을 위해서 일을 하라고. 그래서 이렇게 평생을 일을 하시게 됐대요. 그냥 저도 한국 사람의 한 명이지만 진짜 소홀히 하고 소외시했던 부분을 평생을 이렇게 미국분이 해주신다는데 너무 감사하죠. 그 다음에 지난 정권에서는 유엔에서 저희가 발을 뺐습니다. 그래서 인권법을 결의하는 참가를 위해서 지난 정권에서는 탈퇴를 했기 때문에 계속 이렇게 4년, 5년째 계획이 있었고, 아마 지난 9월달에 한국 언론에서 발표가 나왔어요. 이번에는 제한 참정국으로 이제 다시 가입을 했다고. 그러니까 아마 이제 12월달에 유엔 총회에서 열리는 인권 법안이 좀 통과한 계기를 우리 모두 좀 기도를 해주시고 많은 성원을 또 우리 수잔솔기 여사한테 좀 보내주셨으면 감사하겠습니다. 그리고 진짜 저희도 안타까워요. 진짜 말씀하시길 좋아하시더라고요. 말씀을 참 아주 상세하게 디테일하게 굉장히 말씀하시는 걸 좋아하시는데 저희도 예상치 못했던 일정을 오늘 오셨다고 하시는 분들 됐기 때문에 조금 많이 아쉬운데 하여튼 좋은 말씀 해놓고 빨리 기념 촬영 먼저 하시고요. 식사도 준비되어 있으니까 지금 다 앞으로 나오셔갖고 여기 요 계단 쪽으로 서셔갖고 다 기념 촬영 먼저 하겠습니다.
This is the future time, if you like it. And so this is not, the easy, that we can bring her down to Georgia in her busy schedule. And so this time I'm going to take a picture with her. All of the please come on the stage.
Do you want me to stay here?
We will give the clean at the seat.
Sit? Oh, good.
Hold on a second. They're going to be set up first.
Okay.
Wait. Yeah, 의자 먼저 셋업하시면 제가. Oh, okay. All right. Why don't you go to the middle?
Okay.
People are going to step by the next to you.